Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new Nancy Drew analysis video. Today's Nancy Drew analysis video is particularly exciting because, one, we're on Facecam, and two, it's not just me. I am here with Carter of the Nancy Drew Times, an absolutely incredible Nancy Drew content creator. I was initially introduced to your content on Instagram. You make stories, you do these incredible reels. Your photos series and fun facts are so good. I literally watch your reels on repeat, like dozens of times, because they are so clever and so well done. And you also post videos on YouTube, reviews, and kind of analysis videos as well. And I just absolutely love him. If you guys are not following Carter at the Nancy Drew Times, you absolutely must. But Carter, it's so wonderful to have you here.
Oh my gosh. Hey, thank you so much for letting me be on the channel. Thank you for asking me to be here. And thank you so much for everything you said. I really appreciate that. You're so kind. Thank you. I enjoy your content so much, just as much. So thank you. I do post a lot of review videos, also some theory videos too. I love exploring like Nancy Drew theories. They're really fun. Really Instagram though, I think is primarily where I kind of started. So I do like to post a lot of like photo series and especially reels. I think I love to make little funny spoofs off the Nancy Drew games. So, but yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so pumped to be here during spooky season. So thank you.
I am so excited for this video. We've been working on planning this for a little while. As part of the collab, we did also do a video over on Carter's channel, the Nancy Drew Times, where we did a ranking of the top 10 spookiest Nancy Drew games in honor of spooky season, of course. And in that video, we looked at like the classic spooky games in the series, the ones that we definitely think of when we think of spooky. And for this collab, we wanted to look at maybe some of the underrated Nancy Drew spooky games, maybe the games that don't necessarily have supernatural elements in them, but that are still very spooky, that are still very successful at creating that scary ambiance. So in order to rank the games, these more underrated spooky games, what we decided to do was have 3 separate categories. In each category, there is a possibility of 3 stars. So a total possible score of 9 out of 9 stars would be the highest ranked game. The first category is purposeful unease. So these are kind of the story and plot elements that are integrated into the game in order to make the game feel uneasy, to feel spooky. The kinds of things in the game that maybe aren't super direct, but they help create that ambiance and that vibe throughout that make you feel really unsettled. The second category is purposeful spooky elements, and these are more the scare factor elements that are specifically designed to try and scare you, to try and make you feel afraid. And then the third category is music and environmental details. So maybe those things in addition to the story that are making things more spooky, the kinds of design elements that you can see and the things that you can hear that are making the game feel more spooky and eerie and creepy overall. So with that being said, we have discovered 10 games that we feel like are more realistic, still spooky, even if they don't have those spooky elements. And I think we'll go in order from our number 10 spot to our number 1 spot. Yeah. So Carter, would you like to take it away with our number 10 spot?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I think we both agreed on a number 10 spot. We both had the same spot, same game for this same spot. In our number 10 spot, we put Trail of the Twister. This definitely does have some spooky moments in it, but without those supernatural elements, like you said. Across the board, I gave the purposeful unease a 1, and I gave purposeful spooky elements a 2, and music and environment details a 1. So it was it did rank the lowest out of everything, mostly because I don't think I ever really felt a whole lot of just anticipation for anything to happen. I thought there was going to be a lot more involvement with like storms or moments of, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next, but that really didn't translate a whole lot throughout the game. I think same with music and environment details. Most of the time, everything was pretty much in control, and the music was on the peppier side, I think, of things. So I don't know. It didn't really translate as, I think maybe it was advertised more that it was gonna have a little bit more of that kind of vibe, but I didn't feel that. I don't know. What about you, Caitlin?
Yeah, I agree with absolutely everything you said. My scores are exactly the same for Trail of the Twister, a 1 for purposeful unease and music and environmental details. The music is very like country and bluegrass inspired, very farm life. For the most part, it feels like a very light, happy game, even though, kind of like you said, it was marketed as a tornado game, and tornadoes are scary. They can be extremely terrifying. I just feel like they tried to lean into that element, which I think is where the 2 for purposeful spooky elements came from. They tried to make you feel like your life might be in danger because of the tornadoes and the twisters that you're seeing around you, or the storms that we were getting caught in. But it wasn't ever really as successful as it could have been. Like, I think they could have done a lot more with like changing the color of the sky. Like when a tornado or big storm is coming, usually the sky changes color to like this really weird looking like yellowish green.
Yes.
Yeah, or like the tornado gets really close to you and Nancy needs to like dodge flying debris. The power goes out, thunder and lightning. Like, there's a lot of elements that I think could have been utilized that weren't necessarily. Were there any spooky moments specifically that stood out to you that maybe did accomplish kind of a terrifying feel?
I think really only in this game for me was that one scene in the game where Nancy is in the dark because the power's out, and you can hear the siren from the tornado warning, and you see like a shadowy figure, and Nancy's like, "Hello, Scott, is that you? Is that you?" And you don't know who it is, but then the shadowy figure disappears, and you're just trying to fumble around the dark and do what you got to do. To me, that was really only the spookiest moment out of really anything in the game. But I think that kind of maybe reflects where this game was as far as a game. Like, you can't really do a whole lot with tornadoes in a mystery game, I think they were going much more for the educational side of this game. Like, let me educate all the players on tornadoes and storms and what to do. And I think that's maybe why it falls at the bottom of the mystery, of the spooky and the mystery is just, that's why it falls at the bottom for me, for sure.
Yeah. And I totally agree. That's really the only moment that stood out to me in the game that was like successfully hitting that, like, kind of the power is out, I don't know if I feel safe right now kind of feeling. That's the only time it was like really done successfully.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the same thing for you. That was the same moment for you.
Yep. Yeah. I would have loved if we could have, like, maybe a building got totally demolished by one of these twisters and Nancy had to go to this building and like look through the debris for clues and sorts of things like that to actually get up and close and more personal with the damage that the tornadoes do, because we see like a barn getting destroyed in the distance, but does it hit?
Right. It's distant. Yeah, you don't really feel the, yes, I agree. I agree.
They tried.
Yes. There was an attempt.
It was an attempt, exactly. So for number 9, I put The Silent Spy. And it ranked higher for me than Trail of the Twister because I gave it a 2 for purposeful unease and for purposeful spooky elements. I gave it a 1 for music and environmental details. I think The Silent Spy is another game very similar to Trail of the Twister, where I thought there was so much potential for very scary real life things to be really heavily utilized that just weren't utilized. The whole idea of like, there's this terrorist organization that's going to release this kind of really damaging virus into the world was really scary. And the Revenant calls were spooky. That was really cool. The idea that they were trying to get us to do things. But the overall problem I have with the game is that it gets pulled between the Nancy mom narrative and the spy narrative. And it doesn't know which one to focus on necessarily. And every single location we visit in Scotland is super sunny, is super pretty. The courtyard is really nice. The hotel is really nice. Even the little bunker where we hide at Loch Lomond is really cute. It's like adorable. And so I never feel like my life is actually in danger. Like, there are never actually any consequences.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying about that because
Mhm.
like there definitely are some times where maybe that kind of sense of danger could have gone harder. I
Mhm.
see what you're saying with that.
Sure.
Like Spy for me actually ranked higher up on my list. It was a little bit different for me. I was uh terrified by the idea of being threatened, and then I do appreciate that the game gave us the option to choose whether or not to perform a task, to go through with it or not. I think that made me feel a lot more unease about it. I guess I should go ahead and mention what I scored for Spy. So Spy actually was number 4 on my list, and I actually gave it a 2 for purposeful unease and a 1 in music and environment,
Mhm.
but actually a 3 in purposeful spooky
Oh,
elements
sure.
because I actually um I think once later on you learn that you weren't actually being shot at, but like when being in the hotel room and I really thought I was being shot at, I was like, what? This game is shooting at me. Like, what is this Nancy Drew? Okay. Like, this is
Rude.
not
Rude
right.
game.
Yes. So it definitely like I know gave me a lot of like spook there. I always was on unease about what was going to happen next. Especially with those calls. I think that's probably what maybe spooked me the most is because I was like, I never know what's going to happen. They're gonna if I do it, and if I don't do it, or if I don't do it, they threaten me and they've put me in a dumpster and almost like squished me. Like I was pretty spooked by that.
True.
But I agree with you. Good point that they don't know whether or not to focus on the spy or whether or not to focus on the Nancy and mom thing. That's very
Right.
true. I've never honed in on that detail, but yeah, for sure.
So you would say like the phone calls maybe were like the spookiest element for you in the game?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think just not knowing when they were going to come, the fact that we have the choice to say yes or no, and knowing that there's a consequence to saying no, but you don't really want to say yes, even if it was really just some silly stuff like go put a letter in the mailbox, like,
Yeah.
like, yeah, you just don't know. But yeah, what about you? Like, what was your moment where in Spy where you were just like felt that anticipation and spook?
Yeah. I want to say the kidnapping scene of
Oh,
Moira.
that's such a good one. Yes.
Yeah. And it's one that it's like, well, that's really scary. I mean, that's super terrifying. She like shoves us in a closet and is like, don't say anything, Nancy. And
Yes.
then she's just like, okay, gentlemen, I guess you're here to kidnap me. And then and then away Moira goes. But then she
Yes.
like calls us or like sends us a text like 20 minutes later and be like, I'm free, I'm fine. And I wanted more. Like, what
I
happened
think
to you, Moira?
good.
Let's talk about this. Is it gonna happen to me? Like, I wanted a lot more of that, and it would have felt like the danger was more intense for me. But
Yeah.
that idea, I like the idea, at least the concept of people, and also like people always being like, you will die here.
Yes, that's a good
Very
point. Like
scary.
you are told like often throughout the game that things are dangerous, but
Hmm.
Nancy, being the Nancy that she is, she goes towards danger. So
Silly Nancy.
yes, she is the girl in the scary movie. You tell not to open the door, and she opens the
Seriously.
door. Nancy.
Nancy. So, what game was your number 9?
Okay, so my number 9 was actually The Wolf of Icicle Creek Lodge.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so I think I put that game lower on the list because so I gave Purposeful Unease a 1, and I gave Purposeful Spooky Elements a 2,
Mhm.
and I gave Music and Environment Details a 1. I think I felt not spooked out by the environment or the music, much more just like I felt more immersed into a separate location from spook. I guess I felt more like I am where I am, and I don't feel anything other than that. Like I feel like I am in Canada. I feel the snowy environment. I feel the warmth of the lodge, but I didn't really feel like anything where I felt in immediate danger per se, I guess, or
Mhm.
at unease because I felt like I had a little bit more control in this game, I guess.
Sure.
Whereas and that's why it translated like Spy was up a little bit higher. I didn't feel as much control in that game. Like there were more things happening and unfolding that I couldn't really help happen.
Mhm.
But in this game, I felt much more like, no, I have the mystery in my hands. Like I'm gonna solve it. I'm gonna, go to this location and look for this clue, and I'm gonna interrogate this, culprit about this. Like, felt a little bit more controlled in that situation.
Sure.
I think the only time for me that there was any kind of thread of spookiness was really just the wolf itself, being up close with it in some moments. And yeah, I mean, like, other than that, like, there was really no other spooky-ish moments to me other than just that relationship that Nancy has with the wolf. I think was, because so much talk had been about the wolf, and all the things were, being blamed on the wolf in this game, that I think once you start to develop the Nancy and the wolf relationship, I think maybe that was probably where it was, the most spookiest, was just what's going to happen, to Nancy from this point forward in the game. You weren't sure. So that's how I kind of took Ice for me, was in my number 9 spot.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I totally agree with all of that. It's the overarching kind of ambiance and vibe for White Wolf is very like cozy, staying in at a lodge kind of vibes.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, which isn't super spooky. I ranked it number 7, so not much higher. I gave it like a total score of 5. And for very similar reasons, like you're saying, the purposeful unease, like I definitely don't think that was necessarily there. The purposeful spooky elements, the avalanche where you're kind of getting like trapped in the snow, the bunkhouse blowing up when we come, like
yeah, for that introduction, that was like, oh, okay.
Oh, we're going to explode. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting knocked out by like the snowball at the fishing shack, and then the fishing shack also blowing up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's almost like Trail of the Twister in a way, and maybe a little bit like Silent Spy, where it's like there are actually very, like, if you think about the elements, like actually very scary things happening, like explosions and avalanches and getting trapped in a wolf, the anticipation of like the wolf, how is the wolf going to react? But it's almost, yeah, you're right. There's a sense of control there where they don't end up being as scary, because I mean, you can bring your toasty packs with you. You're not going to die of hypothermia. You've got your toasty packs. Right. And once we do meet the wolf, like any scare factor that was there pretty much immediately disappears once we know that Isis is Isis. So yeah, excellent points. I agree.
Well, thank you. Okay, so number 8. Oh, okay. So for me, I actually put The Secret of Shadow Ranch as number 8. Yes, I don't know. Where did you rank Secret of Shadow Ranch for your list?
That's my number 4.
Oh, it's your number 4. Okay. So this one we kind of differed on a little bit.
Sure.
I put it number 8. Yeah. So Secret of Shadow Ranch, I gave Purposeful Unease a 1. And I actually gave the music and environment a 1 as well. But for Purposeful Spooky Elements, I gave it a 2. The reason why I did that was because, well, first, music and environment. I love the soundtrack of Shadow Ranch and the environment of Shadow Ranch. Like, I think it is so happy, like not even just like peppy. Like I think it's just happy. Like, I am so happy to be here with horses.
Yes.
Outside, and it's just like happy to me. There are definitely moments though that get spooky. I think I love, like, of course, the horse and the nighttime, that one little smidge of nighttime that we get, which I love, and I wish we would have gotten more nighttime scenes. That I think definitely introduced a little bit more of a spooky element. That and the ghost town is really why I gave the spooky elements a 2, was because I thought that together is really what made the game more spooky. I think there was a little bit of unease, but I just didn't feel like it was like enough unease to make me want to rank it to a 2. I think I was like, no, it's still a 1 for me, because even though there's some things that are left like at unease, I mean, I know this is not like someone dressed up as a horse, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way that's happening. So I don't know, the unease for me, I just didn't feel like there was, I didn't know what was going to maybe not happen, or I don't know. The unease for me was not there like it was for other games. So that's probably why it ranked a little bit lower for me. But what was your thoughts on it, since you ranked it higher?
Yeah. And I totally see your points too. I think you make excellent points about just like how in general it's a pretty happy feeling game. I mean, we're at a fun little ranch. We got our chickens, we got our horses, we got Bob, and
Bob, can't
we
forget
get to
about
make a
Bob.
cake, and like, we get to go harvest some vegetables. I mean, the scariest
Yes.
part is getting admonished by Shorty, honestly, but
Oh, amen. That's the truth.
yeah, I gave it a 2 across the board. So a 2 in each category, which brought it up to the number 4th place for me. And I think the purposeful unease for me, not a full-on 3, but it came through for me in the fact that Nancy is very frequently alone in the middle of the desert. Like she's
Good point.
wandering to like the trail stop and then the cliff dwellings at the end, and just all of these like very empty, barren spaces, just her and Bob. And it just, that would make me feel really unsettled if I were in the middle of the desert alone. And the ghost town is easily one of my favorite locations. Definitely a top 10 in the Nancy Drew series for sure. It's the vibes there, the music there, like the like the spooky, the slow songs in the soundtrack definitely get me. And you're totally right. Most of the soundtrack is more of like the high energy country music kind of classic guitar kind of stuff. And it's the spooky electric guitar ones that get me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
which, by the way, I know exactly what track you were referring to when you did that. Like, I know exactly what song you're talking about.
Good. During these 2 collab videos we've done, I've made a lot of very strange noises, and it's comforting to know that you understand what they mean.
It's Nancy Drew language.
Exactly. It's a common language. But yeah, it's the ghost town, I think, is what brought all of these up for me, because I mean, I already felt unsettled in the big open spaces. And then when I'm at the ghost town and there's like, you see shadows in the windows and all of a sudden this little pebble falls off, even though there's literally not supposed to be a single soul here, very spooky. So I thought that that's what brought it up for me overall. Does it have like all the spooky elements? No, yeah, because there's so many nice, happy, sunny places and conversations that we have. But
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really think of it in that way, but like, it's so true. Nancy is immersed in this really large environment, in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, gives you less control, like being out there and not like knowing what could happen at any point. Like, you can't call anyone.
Right.
You can't like, I mean, you could like hop on Bob real quick, but I mean, like, that's just hoping you get to Bob in enough time. But so, yeah, like, I think that's a really good point. I definitely always think about this game and how much I wish they would have utilized a nighttime feature, because it would have been so awesome to have explored deserty area in darkness. Like, oh my gosh, I think that would have definitely made the game so much more so yeah. But I agree with your points, so I think those are really good points. Sure. And the ghost town for me, oh, for sure, that is the spookiest location in the whole game. Just you're supposed to be alone, but the idea that there's elements in there that are creating the presence of someone is also there with you. It's so scary. Yeah. And the fact that we get knocked out there, and we also know that someone's been not living, but has visited that like locked building, that they have supplies in there, they've been in there. That's always so spooky to be in a place where you're like, oh my gosh, I found this secret place that someone else is at. And now I know about it. I'm the only one that knows about it. And I don't know where they're at, and they could be back at any moment.
Seriously.
That is so terrifying. So I agree with you on that for sure.
And my number 7 was White Wolf of Icicle Creek. What was your number 7?
Number 7 was actually Tomb of the Lost Queen.
Ooh.
So yeah, so it was actually not too far. I think
mine's number 8. That's my number 8. Okay. So we just swapped.
Yes, I thought ours was pretty close on that one. Yeah, so I'll tell you what I ranked it. So I ranked Tomb of the Lost Queen a 2 in purposeful unease, and I gave it a 1 in purposeful spooky elements, and a 2 in music and environment details, which I actually think we scored it the same, didn't we?
That's mine too, yes.
Love when that happens. Yes, Tomb of the Lost Queen, which is really like, I'm not too familiar with this game because it's just not one that I always go to play. It's just not a game that I'm like, oh yeah, let me pick up Tomb of the Lost Queen. You know, it
Yeah.
just, yeah, but it's, and so I really ranked it in the number 7 spot though, because looking at it, you know, in terms of spooky, you know, I think it does have more unease and more, you know, threat to it than the other games did.
Right.
Especially in the environment itself. Like, you know that you're entering into something that's like cursed and dark, and you know, you feel that. And also that also creates unease. Like, you don't know what's going to happen from entering into this dark space that you know is cursed. Like, you know, you just don't know. So that's kind of where I went with it. What about you? Like, since we're so close and we ranked it the same, like what were your thoughts?
Yeah, my rankings are exactly the same as yours for the exact same reasons. It's just the idea of like a classic movie style Egyptian kind of curse is it's been done, obviously, but it's been done a lot because it is kind of like a successful idea. It's creepy,
Right.
it's spooky. The idea that something bad can happen to you at any time, and lots of bad things do happen to them at the dig site. I mean, they were caused by other people, but like rocks
Right.
falling on them, the water breaking, the locust plague that comes later on into the water, like all of that is very curse like kind of stuff, and everyone's talking about the curse, and some people are freaking out about the curse. So it's a really cool way of continuing that purposeful unease throughout. The mummy element is very spooky, just the idea of
Yes,
exploring
absolutely.
such an old tomb with the idea that like there's supposed to be a mummy in here somewhere, we got to find it kind of thing.
Oh
I
yeah.
think, and the music does, especially like the slower tracks or like the more ambient kind of eerie tracks, does a really nice job of kind of creating that sense of like you are buried underground. It is heavily implied that other people were buried underground here for life. Their lives ended here because they were buried underground here.
Right.
So it's like that could happen to us at any moment, and I find that very spooky. Did
Oh,
you have
yes.
a favorite spooky element from this one?
Okay, so I actually didn't have a favorite like specific moment. It was really just more of, I think more of the environment itself is what just spooked me. I think it did a good job of that, like you said. Like, you just don't know at any moment, you know, is this gonna happen to me too?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
what happened to the, you know, and I think that is really what spooked me. It's like, what about you?
Yeah. The only one that like really got me was when we originally open up the sarcophagus and there's nothing in it, but then you go back later to
Oh,
open it up and all of a sudden there's a mummy in there.
I forgot about that one. Yeah, that was pretty spooky. That was pretty spooky.
The first time that happened to me, I was like, oh, I'm not okay with that. We're gonna leave. And it reminds me of my favorite Scooby-Doo episode, so it's always fun.
Oh, the Scooby-Doo episode with the mummy?
Yes, it's
I
my
love
favorite
that one.
It's my
I
favorite.
love that one. I love that.
Where he just wants his coin. Oh, I love it.
That is awesome.
Love it. So at my number 6 spot, I had Secrets Can Kill / like Secrets Can Kill Remastered.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I gave it a 2 for purposeful unease and a 2 for music and environmental details, because just the idea of exploring like an empty school is always very creepy. Like it's usually a building in a space that is almost always full of a ton of people. And when it's empty, it feels very just like creepy, like something's wrong. And there's only a few people. You got to kind of walk around to find them. I think the library space was really well done. Big empty space with creepy music, doors open and sirens going off. They did a really nice job with that. And like the random knocking on the door in the teacher's lounge. Yes. It's so scary.
That's the moment right there that just really makes you jump.
Someone's following us, someone's watching us, and I'm not okay with it. A murderer is following us and watching us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what made it most successful for me, is that this is only one of 2 murder mysteries in the series, and that ultimately just like brings it up another level, where it's like, if this person was willing to kill before, they're probably willing to kill again, and that's very scary. The purposeful spooky elements, I gave it a 1. I don't really feel like there were any actual like scary moments or encounters. Any that were there were not like super effective in my opinion. It was more just the environment.
Oh yeah, for
But what
sure.
about you?
Actually, Secrets Can Kill ranked number 5 for me.
Sure.
So as always, we're so close in our rankings. It was just actually our number 6 and number 5 spots are just switched.
Nice.
So yeah, like my scoring for that game didn't really differ a whole lot from yours. I think the only thing, unease and music and environment, both 2 for me as well. The only thing I did was I gave purposeful spooky elements 1 more point. I gave it a 2. And I think in terms of this, I guess I was just more thinking of the school being nearly empty. And that to me is really what spooks me the most. I am so uncomfortable with like those kinds of like environments and spaces. Like I always think of, when I think of like that kind of space, I think of things like a mall closing and it's like after hours and you're in a mall and it's empty. Oh my gosh, no. Like I hate thinking about stuff like that. Like it's just that emptiness, you feel it. And or if you are between one room and another room and it's the hallway to get to that room, it's like a long stretch of a hallway, but like that space is so cold and empty because you're really not supposed to be there for that long. And going through those hallways in Secrets Can Kill and it not hearing voices, you're just hearing the buzz of a fluorescent light, is like such an environment. So I definitely feel that same way that you do, that I get those same vibes, spooky vibes. I think I gave purposeful spooky elements like just 1 more, probably because of just knowing that there was a murder.
Yeah.
And there are just so many times throughout the game where you just don't know what could happen. Like you don't want to set anyone off with your conversation because that may be the murderer. Like everyone had such a good motive, I guess. When I say that, like there's a reason to kill someone. There's never a reason, but like I just mean that their motive was there for what they could have possibly done. And so I don't know, like I was just like so spooked out to even like go forward and interrogate these people because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And the boiler scene really spooks me because that just reiterated like, oh no, like this person's still on the loose, like they're still like looking, and I'm in the way, and they're just gonna take me out at any point. So I think that gave it an extra point because I was so terrified by that. But yes, I totally agree with you though on that game, that environment does have a lot of spook to it for sure.
Yeah. And you make an excellent point too about why purposeful spooky elements could have that higher one. It reminds me too of like, this is one of only a few games where the culprit reveal actually involves like an actual weapon, which is like,
Yes, so true. So true. I remember like, which I didn't actually play the original one first. And I think that does matter. I played the remastered one, mostly because that was just not even in the order that I played the Nancy Drew games, number 1. And number 2, by the time that I actually discovered the first game, I couldn't even run it on my computer. It was like so old. So the remastered one is really which one I focus on the most. And first of all, I never suspected Uncle Steve to be the guy because at that point, I don't think they had really ever done a culprit like that, where it was like you were introduced to the culprit, like no, like they're there to help you, like you were like that was like explicitly stated, like no, this person is just here, he is who he says he is, and you had no reason not to believe that.
Sure.
And it was when the game started taking that direction of when Daryl was like, hey, your Uncle Steve is like he's kind of a Mr. Cranky Pants, and I was like, why? Like why though? Why is this? And so I started getting scared, but that ending scene where he had a gun, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so invasive. We talked about that in the other video that we made. It's such an invasive culprit reveal and ending. So I totally agree. It gave me chills talking about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Craziness.
Yes. And so you also mentioned too that you were in the library. That is such a like very fast spook, but it's still a spook. So is that
Right.
like is that your moment that's like your most like spooky
I
in
think
the
that's the
game?
top one. Yeah, cuz you're just minding your own business trying to look for clues in the library here, and then all of a sudden you hear like these running footsteps, this door slam, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh, should I hide? But I
yeah,
can't.
yeah,
Like there's
exactly.
nowhere that you can hide. Yeah. So, what about you?
Oh, same.
Same.
It
Okay.
was the same one. I mean, like just being in the library and also the music in Secrets Can Kill is not necessarily happy. It's a little bit. I think it has good sleuthing music,
Yeah.
great sleuthing music, but it's
Mhm.
very like chill,
Yeah.
like a little hint of eeriness.
Yeah.
And being in the library and you already have that music going on, it's empty. You get those empty, creepy vibes of a high school.
Mhm.
But then, like you said, like you're just trying to find a book. Like you're not. I mean, like you know what I mean. And you hear that? Oh my gosh! I turned around so fast. I was like, "Who was that?"
Exactly. What are you doing?
Yeah, I was so scared.
Oh,
Oh
so
man.
good.
Yes, so good.
Yeah. Underrated, honestly.
It is underrated for
Yeah.
sure. I love that.
Yeah.
My number 6 was Danger on Deception Island. Um, I love this game so much. It was my first game I played,
Mhm.
and I have never like when you. I think this total idea of this video was so yours, and when you presented it to me, and I was thinking about it, and you mentioned Danger on Deception Island, and I was like, and I started thinking about it, and I was like, oh yeah, like yeah, for sure. Danger on Deception Island totally has like, and I really, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh yeah, I totally remember being spooked at a couple of things in this game, which might be surprising to some people, watching this video because Danger on Deception Island, when you're first thinking about it, you really think, oh, clam chowder and whales, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But there are elements in it that are spooky. So I did rank Danger on Deception Island 2 in unease, in purposeful unease, 2 in purposeful spooky elements, and a 1 in music and environment details.
Mhm.
Um, I know our scoring differed a little bit on that.
Yeah.
Really, I just ranked that unease 2 because we hear a lot of talk about things, but we don't really get those answers until later. So that unease is very much there. Like we hear a lot about, this monster, the stealing that's going on at like the stores and the hijacking that happened back in the day of ships. And so like you're hearing these things and you're seeing these things played out, but you're not really getting like clear, direct answers on on any of on any of that in part of the investigation until later on in the game. So that unease of like, oh, what is going on in this town is there, and I think that's why I gave it a 2. And then purposeful spooky elements, I gave it 2 as well because I do remember um, being in those tunnels, by myself, and it's the same feeling I get from Shadow Ranch Ghost Town, like being in a place where other people have been and that they've been there, but they don't know that that they know that and
Mhm.
so like it's so like just so spooky, and I didn't know at any point if maybe one of the people that were doing the robberies was going to pop out in the middle of the tunnel.
Yes.
I mean, like we're in a dark tunnel with like a flashlight. I'm terrified. And Nancy's just like, oh, I'm just gonna give a flashlight out. I'm just gonna go to the tunnel. I mean, you know what I mean? Like she's just so nonchalant about everything she does. And
Uh,
I think it totally gave me some spook for sure.
mhm.
But music and environment, generally overall, I think is more on the happier side.
Yeah.
So I gave it a 1 because I tend to really enjoy the soundtrack. Like
Yeah.
it's got a lot of, like I think of like the jig
Yeah.
and the Hot Kettle Cafe, and
Mhm.
that to me is just a lot more just peppier. And so I think that's why I gave it more of a 1 because this
Yeah.
game, although it's supposed to be, and it does really well at being foggy and eerie, I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of places that I also feel warm and protected at. Like I
Right.
feel warm and protected at the cafe. I
Yeah.
feel warm and protected at Whale World. And so I
Mhm.
get that more of a 1 in terms of spookiness, but I know we differed. So like,
Yeah.
I totally am so excited to hear your thoughts though on like what were you thinking when you were ranking your Danger on Deception Island?
Yeah. All such excellent points. I totally agree. I think Danger on Deception Island is a game that I think should be like a blueprint for any other game that wants to do atmosphere and environment well.
Yes,
Like it is
absolutely.
just, like you said, you feel so warm and cozy and protected at the Hot Kettle Cafe. And then like a second later, you realize there's this secret tunnel directly connected to the Hot Kettle Cafe. And you go down in this tunnel. There's cairns, like there's crates. People have clearly been here, even though they shouldn't be. And it's that idea of like, am I going to turn this corner in this tunnel? And is some random man going to be there? And I'm just here with my flashlight. Like it's very isolating. And the fog and the way that you can see the locations from a distance, I think is just so incredible. Like when you're leaving certain locations, you can see the lighthouse far away. The lighthouse is crumbling, the clinking noise of the thing at the lighthouse, I don't even know what it is, but it clinks and it's very creepy because it's rhythmic. And wandering around on the beaches, seeing the depths of the sea, the bay, and not being able to see any other land. It just does a really great job of creating like this feeling of isolation, countered with that feeling of like coziness that you get when you go to the other locations. And so just because of that, I thought like the music and the environmental details was so effective for me that I had to give it a 3. And it's primarily that like that siren dirge song. Gets me every time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to stop and do nothing and just listen to how creepy this song is. Yes. And yeah, it ties into the purposeful and purposeful spooky elements. Like I didn't necessarily feel like there were any things that were designed to actually like scare me, but it was more just that whole ambiance of like isolation, fog, creepy, eerie, something's going on here kind of thing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes 100% like so much sense, because without the fog, the intensity of the game just like would not be the same. I think so. Yeah, I agree with you. The environment really does help with that. So I see what you're saying. Yeah,
sure. What was your favorite spooky moment?
Oh, the ending. 100% the ending. And I also think like the ending of this game truly is just outstanding and phenomenal, and probably does some, and also it does something that no other game really had done at that point, and I honestly doesn't do further in the future either. I don't believe they allow the player to believe that this person, that Katie, that did it, and the whole time, you know, you are so convinced because at this point Andy helped you get to that boat, so you're just like, you the whole time you think it's Katie, the whole time. And the whole kayaking up there, walking up the ladder and hearing the smugglers, like that is just further evidence that Katie's the one. Katie, this is her boat, and she's got smugglers that she's with, and having to dodge them and then get down there, and there's Katie sitting in a chair, and you're like, I've got you. As soon as it turns around, and you are just absolutely blown away, shocked, because you're like, my whole life has been a lie. It's not Katie. And I think that whole entire ending was so spooky because you weren't sure what was going to happen. It was thrilling, super anticipating like for the ending. I mean, just so good, so well done. And that was really my spookiest moment. So what about you?
I totally agree. That ending is absolutely fantastic. It's one of my top 3 endings in the whole series. It's so scary. I love that it's in the middle of the bay too. Like you're stranded on a big old boat here at night in the fog, and it's very spooky. Being in the tunnels for the first time was always spooky for me because you're not quite sure what's going to happen, but that ending is just chef's kiss.
So good.
Good stuff. Okay, so number 3, very cool that we have it the same. Stay tuned for Danger. I gave it a 3 for the music and environmental details, because I think that noir detective film kind of soundtrack works so well for creating a sense of just like spookiness, and the little environmental details of like the day and the night shifting and how you get to experience the environments at those different times, I think is all really successful, which is why I gave it a 3 there. I gave it a 2 for the other categories. I think finding the threats all over the place was so successful. Finding the creepy bomb that's about to blow up in Rick Arlen's dressing room, very spooky. Just all of the threats, when you combine them all together, are terrifying. The thing that I think really bumps this up to number 3 for me is just how unhinged the culprit ends up being.
Yes.
Like, we know that the culprit is already at a pretty dark place because of all of these threats that they're sending to the person. And when you read their notes and everything, just like how crazy they are. And then by the end, it's like, you are no longer in reality. This is completely separated. And that's very, very scary, in my opinion.
Oh, I absolutely 100% agree. Yeah. And our scoring for this was almost the same. I gave a 2 for purposeful spooky elements. I gave a 2 for music and environmental details, and a 3 for purposeful unease. I think unease was my highest category just because there was a constant trying to figure out who did this throughout this game. It was a very honed in detective game. Like, we are truly trying to figure out who is doing this to Rick Arlen, who is threatening his life. And there were I think what I also appreciate about this game is that that there's a lot of people on the set. Like, you see that there's a lot of people on the set, and you know that there's these offices, and you can even knock on the door, but you never even get to like interact with them past that point. So you're like, in your mind when you're playing, you're like, who truly could have done this? There's so many people that could have done this. And I think that kind of unease of who did it is really what I think made it so just out of the park for me, was the unease throughout the game. And especially because the more you play, the more aggressive it gets to the ending. You know, it progresses and progresses into this like, oh my gosh, ending. Like you said, that culprit reveal is so good. So I definitely love the day and night difference too. The daytime, I always think of that lobby music, and the nighttime, I always think of that like nice little sleuthing music that they have. It's really well done, and I love that we get to explore at night. Love that we get to explore in their offices and everything at night and really play detective. I think they really just did a good job at that, and I think that makes the spook factor more, because a detective has to put themselves in a situation where it's spooky. I mean, like, you have to like get into this office to investigate, but you have to make sure that no one knows you're in there. You can't be loud, you can't set an alarm off, and I think this game does such a great job at that.
Yeah, so. I totally agree. It sets up this really great, like, this is pretty like realistic. Like, any one of you could be in this work situation where this happens, and then you need to be the detective. And it's like that closeness to reality is pretty creepy, pretty spooky.
Yes.
And I think the ending culprit confrontation for me, just because like how you mentioned how aggressive it is my favorite spooky moment from the game. Is just so aggressive. What's your favorite?
It's very similar to that. I mean, I think that it's a toss up between that and the bomb thing. Like, I'm with you though. I think maybe that's really the first time it was really getting to, you know, be as invasive as it could be to Nancy.
Sure.
Because I mean, just running towards us. And so terrifying. Yes, like so terrifying. And the whole scene of it itself, you know, where you're there and Lillian's there and you can hear over the intercom, that's terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
So, but it was, for me, the bomb. That was very unexpected. You know, the music was all peppy and nice, and you open the door and the music just drops.
Yes.
You know, like it's all dangerous, and you're like, what happened? And like when I approached the desk and I saw it said, "Play me," I was like,
do I have to?
And also, you still don't know it's a bomb. Like, you
Right.
think it's just like a threatening message. I mean,
Yeah.
so excellently
Hello,
done.
Rick.
So excellently done, you know? Oh man,
Yep.
so good.
Very spooky.
It is very spooky. So number 2, the deadly device. Oh man.
So good.
So this one almost nearly got 3s for me and almost everything. It definitely got a 3 in purposeful unease. And I gave it a 2 in purposeful spooky elements and almost a 3 in music and environment. I gave it a 2 though. For me, like, Deadly Device is just one of the more successful mysteries that we got out of the series, because we again went back to the classic murder mystery vibe, and it felt very like Clue to me. Like, we're stuck in a location where someone murdered someone. Like, there is no leaving. Like, no one's gonna leave because it's snowing, and that's scary because one of you did it, and I gotta figure out which one before you do it again. So
Right.
it definitely had that unease factor to it. That's kind of why I gave it a 3. And then the 2 for me for music and environment really just came from the fact that although there was definitely a spook factor to the environment, like there was you know, the dungy darkness of the lab, kind of, you know, wet, cold feeling I felt from that. There was still like some breaks of that feeling, I feel like. So like Gray, for me, Gray was a nice break from that, you know, feeling. Like, even though he was really like cranky, like, he was a very entertaining person to interact with, as was Ryan, as was Mason. Like, you know, like, they all, even if you don't like them, the personalities are so well meshed together. Like, you're getting so much a taste of like everything, that I think it gave me a nice break from the overall environment feeling. So I didn't rank that one as high. And the music, I love that happy lab music. There's definitely some like creepy, like just overall, you know, electrifying. I definitely get electric feelings in the music. But I thought there was a little bit of a happier side too as well. And then purposeful spooky elements, I gave it a 2 because I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of purposeful things done to scare. There was definitely some, like, I love when the elevator gets stuck, like that was whew. But I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of that, because I don't think the game was, you know, created to purposefully all the time just implement this like spookiness to it. So that's kind of where I felt about it. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. Very, very similar rankings and thoughts. I gave it an 8 overall, a total score of 8. So the only category I didn't give it a 3 in was the purposeful spooky elements, because of what you just said. It's like there weren't necessarily those purposeful ones throughout the whole time. There were some, like when we find Gray face down
Yes.
towards the end, like that. Ooh, that's a problem. And they're sprinkled out throughout, and like the knocking on the door when Nancy wakes up one of the mornings, and they've like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
on it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's definitely that. But yeah, I think the real strength of this game and what really makes it spooky is just that whole idea that you are trapped in this building. You know, a murderer is here too, like someone who is willing to electrocute someone to death, and you got to figure it out. And it's, yeah, very, very spooky, very realistic, very scary. I think my favorite spooky element for this one is the moment when Ryan is helping us figure out the security video footage, and we're in there with her, and she's like, wait, I think I got something. And she's kind of typing it out. And then there's like a siren that starts going off and it's blinking. And Nancy's like, what is that? And Ryan is like, that's bad. The murderer knows we found this. And then she just leaves. And Nancy's like, where are you going? And she says, anywhere but here. And that moment for me is just like, oh no. Oh, no,
That is so
no.
true. Yeah, that is a climax right there of like emotion. Oh,
yes.
I definitely think that that's terrifying. That's such a good spooky moment. I don't know. I think I'm like between like 2 things that like scare me, that spook me. I think once we have learned that we get snowed in, and we see that outside and then it's like snowing, I like, once we know that we're stuck, I start to feel like claustrophobic and start to get really spooked. I'm like, oh no, now we're like stuck, you know? But really, I think I'm probably gonna give it to this other moment. I think the other moment is really what spooks me the most. It's when Victor shows up. Because when Victor shows up, and the entire time you were so certain that, and this is probably, I'm starting to get a little bit of the secrets can kill vibe. Like, you were explicitly told, like, this is your help contact, like, nothing more. I don't trust her interactive anymore after these games, because he shows up and I think you, in the pit of your stomach, you begin to get this uneasy feeling that there is more to this character than what's being told to you. And that is terrifying. And I think that is probably my spookiest moment throughout the game, is once he shows up and he just acts like normal and you're just like, hi.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably my spookiest moment.
I love that moment. Maybe because of Secrets Can Kill and getting burned by Uncle Steve, but like when I started playing Deadly Device and he was a video phone contact, I immediately was just like, you killed Nico. Like,
yes,
because they'd never done that before. So I was like, this is like, why are you giving me so much intimacy with a phone character?
Absolutely.
So
agreed.
yeah, when he showed up, I was like,
nope. It's going down. It's going down in the lab.
And then he takes your card. He's like, give it over. And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. So true.
Yes. Okay, so number 1, we have the same game. And I'm so happy about it too.
Yes.
All right. So number 1.
I'm so excited about this one.
Yes. I always feel like this is one of my favorite games because it was my first game, and I feel like it sometimes gets underrated.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but
I totally agree.
Yeah. The final scene, I gave it 3s across the board for purposefulness, spooky elements, and music and environmental details, because right away at the very beginning, we jump like head first into this mystery where Maya is screaming, Nancy rushes in there and she's gone. And then you're kind of like, it sets it up so well where Nancy is rushing around, like trying to figure something out, that moment of panic. And then there's a phone call and then Brady walks in and then she's like, oh my God, I have to find a secret passageway. And she goes through the secret passageway and then Simone is like, somebody just crawled in my wardrobe. And then you have to talk to Simone and nobody's being helpful. Nobody gets it. Nobody believes you. And it's just that constant unease of, I know Maya's here. I've seen her. Nobody believes me. The music always being creepy, the like haunted carnival kind of music, and those moments where we're so close to finding her and then she gets taken away from us again. I think they're always just so good. Plus the culprit reveal is my absolute favorite of all time because of just how unhinged.
Absolutely. 100% agree. Yeah, I also ranked it the same. Just about. I gave it 3s in purposeful unease and purposeful spooky elements, and really technically I give it like a 2.5 in music and environmental details. Like, I didn't give it a solid 3, but I definitely a 2.5, because out of all of the spooky underrated games that we could rank, Final Scene 100% gets number 1, because, you know, of course it definitely has like those, you know, obvious spooky elements that you think of, like the the little machine thing where it's like, you know, pick your card, right up, step right up.
The mysterious Monty.
Yes. And so, I mean, that's obviously, you know, that's of course spooky, but no, like even more than that, just, you know, the progression of day 1 to day 3, and, you know, the overall environment of being in a spooky environment, that, I mean, that sells it to you. I mean, that sells it to you that this is a spooky game. So I definitely feel threatened by a lot of things in this game. So I agree. I know that my scary moment, like you said, you love the culprit ending. Oh, I agree. Like, this game has a phenomenal culprit ending. And for me, it was the same moment. I remember when Joseph just pops out of nowhere. like at the ending and starts saying off the wall things, I immediately like screamed. I was like, no,
Yeah.
no. And I'm like trying to click and get out of there. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it
Yeah.
was the adrenaline you feel. But what was your just spookiest moment in Final Scene?
Yes, it is. It's so hard not to say the ending because that ending really is just like it's got to be the best in the series, in my opinion. Just the adrenaline really is so good, especially when Joseph is just standing there and you want to shove past him,
Yeah.
but Nancy just kind of stands there and he's just like, "How do you think this place will look with a new coat of paint?" And it's like, "No, no, Joseph, no paint, no."
This is not the time to pick out
Yes.
bosses right now.
Yes. No, not the time. It's so good. It's just like the culprit in Stay Tuned for Danger. Very unhinged, very
Yes.
spooky. So that is a great spooky moment for sure. I think it's all that beginning just ends up being so frantic and chaotic for me. Just when Maya is initially kidnapped and then all of the things that happen all at once. It's like the first half hour of the game, you're still very much in control. And I really like that about the game, but it also feels like you're very much not. Like things are just spiraling outside
Oh,
of
yeah.
Nancy's control. And I just think it's such a good game. It's so effectively done. There are a lot of phone calls for sure, but I think the spookiness of this one makes it really fantastic.
Oh yeah, 100% agree. And it definitely is effective, like you said. I think this game is probably one of the most effective games out of the entire series because it gives you a lot of unease and spookiness and adrenaline and questions. Like it does the job. It really
Yeah,
does.
right. And Nancy really helps us along with it. Like she doesn't let any of the characters just be like things are fine. She's like constantly shouting at people like, "No, you don't understand. I saw this," and no one listens to her.
Yes,
And I just love sassy Nancy in this game.
absolutely. Yes, we need more sassy Nancy.
We do. Yes. Where was that same energy when Bess was kidnapped? Like,
Exactly.
come on.
Exactly.
So good. Well, so many fantastic, underrated, spooky games. I absolutely adored talking about all of these games with you, Carter. It's
Yes.
so fun to have Nancy Drew chats.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much for like having me on your channel. It was really fun to rank them with you and just collaborate on it. Like it's just so cool, like watching you and your channel all the way through the pandemic to now. And now I'm getting to be on your channel. What? And like talk with you and meet you. Ah, so cool.
Oh my
So
gosh.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, same all the way. Such an honor to get to work with you. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming to the channel and participating in this collab. You all definitely need to check out Carter at the Nancy Drew Times on Instagram and YouTube. That will be linked in the description. Definitely check out our collab video of ranking the top 10 spookiest Nancy Drew games over on Carter's channel as well. And thank you all for being here, fellow detectives. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Sims 4 content.
Bye, you guys.